Hi, YouTube. Mail time. So if you're wondering what this package is, I ordered some lenses because I was going to be filming a wedding this weekend, and I kind of wanted to use some different lenses because I use this lens, and it's the kit lens, the 14 to 42, and it's not the brightest lens because it has the f aperture of 3.5 to 5.6, and it's not very the best when it comes to low light performances. It does decent, but it doesn't add a lot of light in, so you get some grain when you crank up the ISO. So I decided to use this company called Lens Rentals. Now this is a disclosure of that. This is not advertised. This is not an advertisement. I'm putting that out there. I'm just saying this is the people that I used. And I ordered to rent a couple lenses. I wanted a wide angle lens because this lens actually has like a little adapter thing on it on the front, so it makes it more wide, even though it is a 14 to 42. So it makes it like a 6 to 8 millimeter focal length. Here are the lenses. I don't need that anymore. So I kind of wanted to take this time and talk about lenses. Couple things. The focal lengths, like the different ranges of focal lengths. Aperture, like what is aperture? I'll explain that a little bit. Prime lenses and zoom lenses, the differences, and what you may need them and what kind of environment you may need them for. And distortion. This is the first lens. Hello, how are you? This is Lumix Panasonic 35 to 100. Now the reason why I got this one is filming weddings, you kind of need to be at a distance. You don't want to be like all up on people if you use a wide angle lens like this, because you see how far away I am, and the camera's like arm's length away. So if you film with this a wedding, it's a little tough because you kind of be like right up on people, and I might make them awkward and try to film people when they know they're being filmed. People act a little different, and you kind of want to get that genuine feeling at a wedding. So that's what I went for a zoom lens. Oh, this is the one where this is the kind of zoom lens where it's the glass that moves inside instead of the body. Let me explain that. This is a zoom lens that I have for my Sony a6000. So this one is a zoom telephoto lens, but as you see, the body kind of adjusts to the focal length. So this is 55 and this is 210. So if you ever put that on a stabilizer, it's gonna jack up your stabilizer. It won't jack up the stabilizer, but it'll jack up like the balance of it, you know? But this one will work perfect, I think, with a stabilizer because the body doesn't move, just the glass does, so everything stays stabilized. But this bad boy has optical image stabilization. It's a 35 to 100. So in crop factor terms, this is a micro four thirds. So to a full frame, that is equivalent to a 70 to 200. But look at that glass. Look at that glass. It's got a nice metal mount on the back too, so that's good. It also came with the lens hood, so that is very, very nice. I think it's getting dark in here. All right, it's a little better. Ooh, okay, so this is the one that I actually wanted to rent. More so on the fact that I actually might purchase this lens sometime in the future to replace this one, because that one, the glass that is in the adapter, it doesn't connect to the housing anymore, so it kind of rattles. I kind of need something a little bit more quality based. Also, if you notice, around the edges, it's kind of like defocused or unfocused. The center is usually okay, but it's got like a little weird bokeh that's not very flattering. I don't know, this may be different with this one. But this one actually has a lens hood built onto it, so I don't think you can actually put filters rings on this at all. But it's kind of cool because the lens moves inside as well, which is kind of fancy. But as you see here, the lens hood kind of protects the bulbous glass that is on top of there. So that's kind of nice. But look at that. Look at how round that is. Now I don't know the specs about like lens pieces and how many's inside and all whatnot. But I don't know, we'll see what it looks like later. Also has a metal back housing, so that's pretty good quality there. Okay, so like I said, I wanted to talk about focal length. So actually, let me take this off. Okay, so for those of you who may be looking into buying a vlogging camera that is 4K possibly, because this one, the Lumix G7 is actually one of the very budget-friendly 4K cameras, and it takes a great picture, but the kit lens it comes with, very close, because it is a 14 to 42, but on a crop sensor, that makes it to a full frame equivalent, so it's really like a 28 to 84 lens, and that's not very wide, it's like the lower spectrum of wide. So this is what a 14 millimeter lens looks like from like hands width away. Let's see what this one looks like. Oh wow. Oh wow. That's a lot. That's arm lengths away, and that's so much wider even with the adapter I had on the previous lens. That is wide. Okay, that's at 7. That's at 14. That is so much more room. I mean, you can see everything. Okay, so one thing about wide angle lenses when it comes to like this wide, as you can see, things look kind of distorted, like my hands look ginormous compared to my head. That's kind of what it does because the glass is like bowed out like that, so it just distorts the image a little bit. A little bit of a fisheye. You see, like, I get close and I move to the side, my head starts to stretch and look different. But I mean, if you're vlogging with this, you're mainly in the center, so everything's fine, but it also gives it like that artsy kind of vibe if you're going for that. And this has a constant aperture of f4. Now, since I brought up aperture, when it comes to zoom lenses, especially like kit lenses, this one's at 3.5 to 4, so that means when you zoom in, it gets darker. But with this one, this is a constant f4, so as you zoom in, it stays f4. So that's perfect for video. But this one as well is a constant f-stop of 2.8. So that 2.8 is gonna give a lot of light in dark situations. And also, when it comes to bokeh, I think it's bokeh, because it is Japanese. Anyway, I'll throw up some test shots. This is being shot with my Lumix 25mm at 1.7. At that low of aperture, it has a very shallow depth of field. So whatever's in focus is in focus, but everything behind it is like buttery smooth goodness. But as you crank up the aperture, it actually, not only it makes the image darker, but things all around are more in focus as it makes that darker. Okay, just for the fun of it, it's gonna be a little weird, but I'm just gonna go ahead and throw the 35 to 100 on it. Just see what it looks like. Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's close. 35 to 100, so technically that's still a 200. Oh goodness, I can't even focus because I'm so close. Focus on me. Okay, so that's at 100. And back sitting on my chair, you see how close that is. It can't even focus. But actually, this is still at f4, so I can actually crank this bad boy up to f2. And I can drop that ISO down. That just clears everything up. Okay, I'm just gonna switch back to the 7mm so I can finish this video up and explain some more things. All right, yeah, I'm just gonna do this little maneuver. Yeah. Okay, so where were we? Now, just one last thing I kind of want to revisit and highlight is talking about aperture. Now, aperture is how much light is let into the lens, into the sensor, that'll give you either a shallower depth of field, more clarity, and kind of like stuff like that. Now, this was the 25mm f1.7. That means this lets in a ton of light. And as doing so, like I mentioned before, it gives it that very shallowy depth of field, so whatever's in the background is like buttery smooth. But the reason why I want to mention aperture is because, like, especially, I think of photography too, but mostly video, like what I use it for, having a higher aperture, especially in low light conditions, is much better. When you're shooting a low light, it's best to shoot manually. I think it's best to shoot manually most of the time. It's when you're using the ISO, you want to have the aperture as wide open as possible, and your shutter speed usually is double what your frame rate is, and then your ISO. Those are the three things that are usually focusing on when getting a good exposure. Now, what happens when you crank up an ISO, depending on the camera, if you get closer to the higher range of ISO, it digitally brings up the brightness of the image, and usually it distorts it where you get like the really grainy, like miscolored artifacts that float around the screen. But when you have a higher aperture, you can lower the ISO so it gives it a more cleaner, crisper video. Thought I'd help out with some cool things that I knew about some lenses. Don't forget to click that like button. I'm not gonna do all that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in for this, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.